Friends, hello. I'm Marc Scorca, trustee of Washington National Opera and chair of the National Friends of the Washington National Opera. Delighted that you're with us today, and I'm so pleased to have my wonderful colleagues here to talk about what's coming up next season. Of course, you know Timothy O'Leary, General Director, and Francesca Zambello, Artistic Director of WNO. But we also have with us today Christopher Cano, who's the Director of the Cafritz Young Artists Program and the American Opera Initiative. And Christopher's going to join us in talking about the season ahead, which is this episode, to talk about what is going to be on stage at WNO in a really bold season ahead. So I'm going to first turn to Cheska and ask her, what are the operas that we're doing next season?
We have an incredible lineup. Much of it is things that we had thought about before, and some of them were things that we had thought about during COVID, which got canceled. And also, we are really taking advantage of the fact that we are going to multiple venues to really produce operas in a site-specific way that is really going to integrate the audience with the action in each place. The season opens with our continued tribute to the American semi-sesquicentennial with Madama Butterfly and Nixon in China. Each of these productions are going to be at the Constitution Hall, Daughters of American Revolution Constitution Hall, in a setting that is going to be so unique and so different, which we'll talk about more in a future episode. But I'm just going to give you a little preview in the fact that the audience is surrounding the action. It's a huge three-quarter thrust. And we're also incorporating the idea of people being a little more comfortable by bringing cafe tables for several hundred people in the front section so that you can enjoy a cocktail while you are watching either of these operas. Each of the productions is a new production. It uses the space with real scenery, but also projections. The orchestra is on stage, upstage. Butterfly is a spectacular cast, directed by Lauren Meeker, and with Karah Son as the protagonist, and joining her is the tenor Matthew White and Will Liverman as Sharpless. And the rest of the cast is filled out by many of our Cafritz Young Artists. You want to jump in there, Chris?
Sure. This is a significant year for the Cafritz Young Artists. This is the 25th anniversary of the program, which is a tremendous milestone and something that we have to be incredibly proud of. Francesca has been incredibly generous and enthusiastic in offering our Cafritz Young Artists wonderful opportunities on stage. So we start the season with, I believe, 7 of our young artists in some of the comprimario and secondary, tertiary roles in this production of Madama Butterfly. We have 2 of our current young artists and an alum singing in Nixon in China as well. We'll get into the other shows as we get further on in our conversation. But one of the exciting things that's happening with Madama Butterfly is Tondo Mamba, one of our wonderful baritones, is going to be covering Will Liverman in this role, but he will get to do one of the main stage performances. He will do the second performance as Sharpless. It is his role debut, and to say that he is excited to have this chance of a lifetime on such a wonderful stage in such a beautiful production is every young artist's dream. So we're really excited to see. We're going to see a lot of the young artists over the course of the season, which I'm very excited about.
And then with Nixon in China, I'm happy to say that we are returning to something that we had programmed during COVID. So in a way, Nixon in China, Madama Butterfly, it's America in 2 very, very different looks in the world in Asia. And that is featuring, for their American stage debuts in these roles, Thomas Hampson as Richard Nixon and Renée Fleming, beloved local artist, as Pat Nixon. They have performed these roles at the Paris Opera, but this is their American stage debut in these roles. And the production is directed by Elkanah Pulitzer and conducted by our own music director, Robert Spano. So this pairing is, I think, an incredible beginning for the season. And then we have one special event in the fall season, which is a concert called We the People. And it's not a test. You better know where that quote comes from. And it will be a concert that features all of the guest artists, as well as many of the Cafritz Young Artists, led by Robert Spano. in repertory that's really Verdi, Mozart, contemporary works. So much about opera is about revolution and change and liberty and freedom. And so I'm thrilled that we'll be doing excerpts from many works that we might normally not present, but a chance to hear them in concert. So that's the fall repertory.
Well, Cheska, it's wonderful to hear this pairing, and I want to hear about the rest of the season too, because people can of course subscribe at any time here. And I hear you saying one plan canceled during COVID, Butterfly more recently. When did you actually button down what the season is going to be? Given all the turmoil over the last 18 months of leaving the Kennedy Center and having to find new venues for last season, when did you finally let the ink dry on this coming season?
Well, we left the Kennedy Center on January 9th, and we immediately, which Tim can talk about certainly, created our new our 70-year-old startup is what I'm calling it. And I had been looking at venues for some time, 6 months before that, with concern that we would have to leave the Kennedy Center. And so I think the ink dried with our director of production signing off on some of these venues as recently as last month. So in a way, that Constitution Hall is our most unconventional location, because every place else we're going are theaters that our colleagues in Washington, D.C. And Virginia and Maryland are helping us out with in a way, and we're able to perform at other venues. So we did not want to let go of our holiday opera, which is one of the most important parts of our programming. We're incredibly committed to youth in the area. And so every year we do an opera in the holiday season. This year, we planned the Odyssey. It's a work by Ben Moore and Kelly Rourke. We planned it way before the film came out. I just want to be really clear about that. And this work will feature an orchestra, 20 kids, and all of the young artists in various roles. We're performing it in a theater called The Cradle that's part of Arena Stage, which is, again, another great collaborator. And this is a wonderful way to introduce families, kids to opera. And this opera, it really is the Odyssey, but it's only an hour long. So you do not have to worry about reading the whole thing beforehand. And it has memorable music, and all of the kids and the young artists have really fun roles. And it brings this incredible work of literature alive in a very different way.
Francesca is, as usual, being modest, but this is an incredibly inventive production that uses puppetry and all kinds of, very simple theatrical tricks so that the audience is transported into all of these incredible settings and iconic characters and scenes like the Cyclops and whatnot in the Odyssey. Every child and adult who attends is going to be completely fascinated.
Oh, how wonderful. How wonderful.
I think that we are thinking of our season ourselves as our own version of the Odyssey. This year, we are continuing our American Opera Initiative. It's the 15th season of new works. We usually do 3 20-minute operas or a one-act, 1-hour opera. At this point, we have premiered over 50 pieces, bringing together librettists and composers, many who've gone on to major careers, including someone like Carlos Simon, who's the composer in residence, Missy Mazzoli, Janine Tesori. The list is long, and we're very proud of this program. And Chris is the artistic director of that part of the company. And this year, we're going to perform in our own studio theater, which is part of our rehearsal studios in Tacoma. We have one repeat 20-minute opera and then a new one-act world premiere. And I'm going to let Chris talk about that one.
Sure. So this is something new that we're trying this year that we're really excited about. We've re-engaged one of our recent teams to write a companion piece to one of our more successful 20-minute works from 2 seasons ago. Claire Bierman and J.L. Marler are 2 upcoming powerhouse composer librettist teams, and we are just so excited to have them join us for this iteration of AOI. And I don't want to reveal too much about the thematic material or go into those details. I want to save it for the folks who are planning on coming to participate in the performances and see them. But we're just really excited to have this wonderful team back with us. I just saw them I saw JL, the composer, up at Glimmerglass this past weekend, and and they are just so excited to be back with us performing in our new venue. Doing the performances at Tacoma have been, we did it this last iteration in May, and it's really wonderful to be able to do these on our home territory, especially because the pieces start there. We workshop them there. There's just something pretty magical about the whole process taking place there over the course of the year, and then finally presenting them to the public is the cherry on the icing of the cake.
Well, and that leads, I guess, the next main stage production is a world premiere.
Exactly. And in a way, it's a culmination of us working with composer and librettist who we have a relationship with. The world premiere is called O'Keeffe, Kiss the Sky. This work is inspired, obviously, by an American icon, George O'Keeffe. We are working with the composer Christopher Tin. He is a noted Grammy Award-winning composer who wrote for us our new ending of Turandot, which we did 2 seasons ago. And the librettist for that was Susan Sunhee Stanton. I wanted to, in a way, address the issue of Turandot, where she never seems to really resolve. She goes from Ice Princess to Koloff kisses her, and it's like she's supposed to be better and fall in love. And I've never liked doing that ending. So I charged them with giving us an ending where it feels like she has to address some real human emotions and, in a way, forgive the past, but also understand the past and accept her people and become a great leader. And that she can lead alone. She doesn't have to hand the crown over to Koloff. And so the ending was incredibly successful. I'm thrilled that it's going to Montreal Opera and to Dallas Opera this season alone, and it's lined up for other places. So we wanted to commission Christopher to write a larger piece. The other element of this is that dance is such an important part of opera. And in the 19th century, ballet and opera, they existed so much more together. But of course, it was often like, okay, now it's time for the dance. And so working with choreographer Jessica Lang, who has choreographed for us Aida and Turandot, we said, let's do a ballet opera. Let us try to create a form where these two art forms are truly melded in a narrative way rather than, oh, here comes the ballet. So we have been workshopping this off and on for about a year. And it is, in a way, a simple piece, but I think a very moving piece. It has 3 protagonists. George O'Keeffe, who will be played by Isabel Leonard. Alfred Stieglitz, who was O'Keeffe's husband, the photographer and gallery owner, played by Bill Burden. And the friend of Georgia O'Keeffe's who brought her originally to the West, herself a fellow artist and writer. And in a way, Mabel Lewin was the woman who opened up the door for O'Keeffe, who really brought the West to her. Many people have said, well, are there going to be like all the images of O'Keeffe's paintings? No, actually, the idea is that we tell the story of O'Keeffe, her relationship with Stieglitz, their eventual breakup, and how this friendship between the 2 women really nurtured and grew O'Keeffe as an artist. And so the act of painting and the world of the Southwest is brought alive through dance. And so there are 6 dancers, 3 singers, who really tell the story of what it is to paint, the act of creation, and also that landscape, which I think is very hard to depict visually on stage. And so by using dance and classical ballet and things like pas de deux with 2 women, just very using a conventional art form, but bending it. And so this piece, I think, is going to be, I hope, a revolution and something that could enter the standard repertory. The librettist is Kelly Rourke, and I think will be something that's very beautiful and very meaningful, and again tells a story, a very American story. I'm thrilled that we're partnering with our friends at the Shakespeare Theater Company. They are hosting us at the Harmon Theater, which is a beautiful 900-seat theater where we'll have a chance to experience the intimacy of this work. And this is paired with a little bit more of our journey through the Mediterranean. We will be doing Idomeneo, Mozart's Idomeneo, but we're calling it Idomeneo, A Trojan Tale. This is an adaptation which Robert Spano is conducting. It will star Gregory Kunde, as well as a number of our Cafritz Young Artists. And we are taking the piece, keeping all the orchestra music, but we are removing the recitatives and having a kind of a character who's a form of a narrator, who's a Trojan refugee, a woman who tells the story of Idomeneo losing his kingdom, what happens to this population, where they go, and sort of their journey. That character, the Trojan woman, will be played by a Washington, D.C. favorite actress, Holly Twyford. And so this is a way of, I think, looking at a standard work, again, with a little bit of a twist, something different. The orchestra will be on stage for Idomeneo, and the action will be throughout the orchestra, so that Elia sings an aria and the clarinet who's accompanying her is like there with her. And so I wanted to try and use this intimate space for two works that, they don't pair together so much as stylistically they go together. And so the rest of the cast features some of our incredible singers who are part of our program, who will fill out the cast alongside Gregory Kunde.
Yeah, they're sharing the stage with one of the great tenors in the world, this legendary powerhouse, and the rest of the cast are made up of young artists, including in the leading roles. We have Lauren Carroll taking on the role of Elettra. Viviana Goodwin is taking on the role of Elia. And Veronica Siebert is taking on the role of Idamonte, and the rest of the roles are all Cafritz Young Artists. They had the wonderful experience of sharing the stage with Greg in Il Tridico this past spring with the NSO in their presentation of that wonderful masterpiece. And so they've already had a little taste of what's to come in sharing the stage with him. And I have to say, I was very touched at the end of the Tridico. I went up to Greg and said, this is your cast for the Idomeneo, as this was in the works for him, and his face lit up. He was so excited to be able to come back to Washington to do not only Francesca's iteration of this wonderful piece, but to share the stage again with these talents. So I think it's going to be a very exciting thing, not just for the audience, but especially for the young artists to have that opportunity with him.
Well, and Mark, if you'll permit me, I want to play my role as cheerleader for Francesca's vision on this, because this is a classic Francesca Zambello innovation, a brilliant move, a piece with such beloved music as Mozart's Idomeneo, which is not often heard. One reason it's not often heard is that actually it has a reputation for being a little long, right? That's among Mozart operas. You're looking at the world's greatest lover of Mozart operas, but this one's a little long. And so Francesca thought audiences should still be able to get this extraordinary music, and we just have to adapt it a bit for the 21st century audience. And so by introducing this theatrical device of the narrator, it moves the evening along. Everyone who comes will be like, why have I never seen Mozart's Idomeneo before? Because this version of it is going to really make it come alive for a contemporary audience. And I also have to say, it's one of our ways of celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Cafritz Young Artists program, that these artists, who are the stars of the next generation, these are the world's greatest singers who you will all have heard of in another 3 to 4 years, singing major roles all over the world. And now, for this 25th anniversary of the program, they're all singing major roles alongside Gregory Kunde and this Mozart masterpiece.
I can't wait. But that's not the end of the season. There's one more.
And so we are closing the season with a beloved classic, Verdi's La Traviata. That features a cast of international artists. There will also be one performance featuring our Cafritz Young Artists. I think we're all thrilled to close out the season with a classic. We will be performing at the Music Center at Strathmore, where we will bring Verdi's La Traviata alive. This will be an elegant production, which also features the orchestra on stage with a new Italian sensation, Francesca Piavitale, leading the cast as Violetta, opposite Ben Bliss as Alfredo. This is a chance to experience grand opera in a beautiful setting at Strathmore, a venue where we had a hugely successful West Side Story last year. Not only will there be performances led by Francesca Piavitale, but there is one performance which features all of the Cafritz Young Artists as well. So I think it's a great way to close the season. This means in our season we have Puccini, Verdi, and Mozart alongside new works and contemporary works. And so I certainly am excited to end the season with one of our most beloved operas and productions.
Wow. And it sounds fantastic. And if I count, it is, I think, 7 productions in 5 different venues. It is just a spectacular season. And you have certainly whet my appetite. I was going to be there anyway, but now I'm going to be there with real excitement and bring friends too. It's just a fantastic season, Cheska. Thank you for explaining it so brilliantly. We are going to be back on August 25th with a deeper discussion about the venues and how the venues are being adapted for the season. We're going to be chatting with Chelsea Dennis, who's the director of production at Washington National Opera, about what it takes to move a company to all these different venues in the course of one season. And of course, none of the venues being particularly familiar the way the Kennedy Center was so familiar to the staff. So we're going to be exploring that from the technical production side in our next episode. But in the meantime, I thank you so much for being with us today, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon, and of course in Washington for performances.